Good morning everyone, welcome back to my weekly outlook. We're going to jump straight in. We're going to start off on the monthly as we always do. Alright, so let's go into this monthly price action. We are within our bullish leg, so from this low here, this dealing range low to this dealing range high, okay, where we met resistance at this bearish imbalance and order block. So as I've been talking about for weeks now, the monthly bias that I had was to look for a pullback. Right, so a pullback towards this discount zone here, because we have many overlapping PDAs, POIs for price to be drawn to after it had this bearish reaction at these highs. Okay, so firstly we have that quarterly fair value gap high here, right, which represents this green box on the quarterly time frame. So we have this quarterly fair value gap. Also within that fair value gap we have that quarterly inverse fair value gap where it held price as resistance and could later become support, and we have this order block here on the quarterly and monthly, right, as well as these monthly overlapping fair value gaps here and BPRs, which I don't have in at the moment. Yes, the monthly still looks shaped up for that pullback. However, what I would say now is we'll see it mostly on the weekly, but we have about a week left of this month and price has been bullish so far, right? So we had the SMT at these lows because DXY has already entered the quarterly fair value gap, which was our first target, right, to see where price could react from and possibly even continue bullish from. So we got to remain flexible and consider that price may be ready to continue bullish from here, you know, targeting these highs, and we still have more weak highs for buy side liquidity above. Okay, so that's something that will be on my radar, and we'll see more on the lower higher time frames like the weekly. So yes, in an ideal scenario we have all of these POIs down here towards this discount that price could be drawn to, right? Good draw of liquidity down here, but we have to consider that this SMT was an early sign and that price is going to continue bullish now. Okay, so we'll see that mostly on the weekly. So let's go down to the weekly now and see why I'm considering that option. So here on the weekly we had that aligned bearish structure because we have the dealing range high to the dealing range low, so you can see where the weekly broke structure there and created this bearish leg. We pulled back to this bearish POI here, this bearish imbalance area, and price has sort of been held at this point. However, last week we did close out, leaving behind a bullish imbalance. So as you can see with these just two quick scenarios I've drawn out here, yes, price action is still in this bearish structure here, and we do still have this resistance POI. However, from this SMT coming in with this bullish price action and now leaving behind this bullish fair value gap here, price could use this, find support here of course, and then continue higher. So as I've written here, weekly structure favors the bearish outlook. However, it could be short-lived. You know, we may be bearish down to this previous weekly low, find support here and respond bullish from this imbalance. Okay, so that SMT was signaling that price could continue bullish from there, as that quarterly fair value gap's already been met on DXY. So I hope that's clear, right, why I'm considering the bullish scenario as well. Now going forward, of course, this week we could still have a bearish week. Okay, we still have this bearish imbalance here. Price closed out as this doji, which is a slowdown of course in momentum compared to the previous week, right? We did have a lot of bullish price action happen, but once price took some buy side liquidity we saw a bearish reaction from there. We'll see that on the daily, right? But that's a couple things to consider. We of course have these draws on liquidity below, but we have SMT, we now have a bullish imbalance here that price could use, right, to continue going higher. Yeah, so we need to think of that in our scenarios going forward. Of course, price could break through this and then use it as resistance, but we can't consider that option until it plays out. Okay, so these are the two options I'm seeing going forward for the future. So in regards to the weekly, I could favor that bearish outlook, at least until this zone here, so could see a bearish week play out. However, we need to see the daily as well, because the daily of course may not agree with this scenario. So let's go down to the daily. Let's see how that looks for us. So straight away I'm just going to point out this area here. Right, we have our bullish dealing range here, we have our bullish order flow on the daily, as I've said in my previous videos. This is where the daily and weekly overlap with their POIs, PDA. So the weekly bullish imbalance is also around this zone, and here on the daily we have a bullish imbalance. We also have this inverse fair value gap here, right, which you can see was resistance and then pretty much was support, but we could still retest this area for it to hold. Okay, so this is down in the discount of this daily dealing range. All right, price has had its clear bullish order flow. We took that low resistance buy side liquidity above here and some SMT entered the market. So we've had a bit of a bearish reaction there. We still have further low resistance buy side liquidity above. So there's multiple scenarios to consider on the daily time frame, as it does not align with any weekly bearish structure or order flow, except there is that draw on liquidity below. So price may be drawn for that deeper pullback instead of, say, respecting this bullish imbalance here, right? But we're still holding this imbalance, so we still have that scenario for this to hold and price to then go up and just continue in that bullish order flow that it has already had. We could have that deeper pullback towards the weekly and daily zone here, and then price could of course continue bullish. We could go below this, use it as resistance, right? So I've just drawn out a couple of these. We could take the buy side liquidity first and then still break down. Okay, so there are things to consider here, so we have to take it a bit more day by day. At this current time, we are still being held here at this first bullish imbalance, right? So price could continue bullish from here. So how the lower time frames react in here will be very important to trading direction and how we continue for the rest of this week. All right, so if we look at this shape here, right, as I go on about these market maker models, we have this clear V shape that could play out, right, for that potential market maker buy model on the daily time frame. All right, we could see this buy side curve now complete this pattern here. So that is that potential upside market maker buy model. Of course, we already have this buy side curve here. Could we see price react and be held here from this daily imbalance that's held price previously, and it's also of course that weekly imbalance, and see price break down, creating that sell side curve? Yes, of course we could, right? But as I said, we have that higher time frame SMT in play. Right, we've had SMT at these lows twice now, so DXY has already gone into that quarterly fair value gap. We now have these bullish imbalances on the daily as well to deal with, and the weekly, so we could see price go higher, and this is now a market maker buy model on the daily to continue with that order flow, right? So those scenarios exist, and we must be aware of them and be cautious and wait for things to align, wait for the lower time frame to give us clear order flow, in my opinion, as well, so we can see where price is going. We may get that temporary bearishness down to this zone here if price is not held, right? But then we can consider bullish moves from there once the order flow kicks back in. So in terms of the daily, weekly, I still believe they don't align, because the weekly of course has its bearish structure and it's at its bearish PDA, POI at the moment, right, with that imbalance up here. Daily of course already has bullish order flow. We're already in this bullish imbalance here, so we could see price go higher, whereas the weekly does not yet. So I hope the picture isn't too confusing. Right, I hope I've been clear. Let's move on to the lower time frame, but any questions just let me know in the comments. So recently we completed this very obvious 4-hour market maker buy model, larger market maker buy model here. You can see when we took out those low resistance highs, SMT came into the market, we had that bearish reaction. So now zooming back in on the more current price and order flow, there was this possible trap scenario. Okay, price has obviously had a bearish reaction from this high here, and then what could look like a switch in structure, right, a break of structure to the downside, looking like a bearish structure. However, when we took that buy side liquidity and then that sell side liquidity, we went into that daily and lower time frame 4-hour overlapping imbalance here. Price was held by that. Price had a bullish reaction from there. However, we also had a bearish reaction from this BPR. that bearish move is still being held at this overlapping fair value gap, right? So it could still be a bearish trap, right? It does look like now we have a bit more order flow, but because we're still being held by this zone, because the daily is still bullish, right? Like I've written here, despite the two bearish reactions, I cannot fully trust the bearish order flow on the lower time frame, as it's against this PDA here and the daily order flow. We could still kick in bullish order flow from this zone here, right? Despite these lower time frame structures, because it could still be a trap into this zone here, taking sell side liquidity and then continuing bullish towards this previous weekly high. There was no convincing close below this low as well. It looks more like a liquidity grab at the moment. So the 4 hour still displays this possible trap scenario, build up of liquidity, take buy side, sell side into this POI here, and then we could continue going bullish from there. This doesn't look like very high resistance, it's quite low resistance, so price could quite easily take out all of this buy side liquidity here, right, from this zone. So the bullish scenario isn't really over. I can't trust this bearish formation here to start jumping into trades without acknowledging we still have this bullish POI area here and daily order flow to go against. Okay, so let's go down to the 1 hour. Let's see if there's any more there for us to have a look at. So the 1 hour did complete a nice, well, M15 1 hour, nice sort of market maker sell model fractal. You can see we built up that buy side curve, went into that 4 hour BPR, broke down, completing that sell side curve here for that sell side liquidity. Right, but again, we're still being held at this overlapping fair value gap. We have a 1 hour fair value gap here as well. So price is still unconvincing. What I've written here on the 1 hour is I would benefit from seeing more lower time frame order flow, especially M15 and 1 hour for direction, to try and avoid these traps and improve my probabilities with the conflicting high time frame. So this morning started off in a way that, you know, we could see further bearish price action play out. We've taken that sell side liquidity. We've now this morning spiked up, taken Asia range high buy side liquidity, some buy side liquidity from the previous day, and we've got some SMT. So we could see price break down, right? But again, I would need that order flow. I would need to see this nice strong high stay intact. Okay, so we'd see this sweep of buy side liquidity and price break down convincingly, leaving behind bearish PDAs, right? We have a lack of them here. We just have one here. Right, break down again, take out some lows here, and that would start to paint a better picture of bearish order flow. At the moment, this sell side liquidity, until we start taking out these lows, we could easily just sweep the Asia range lows below here and then start building bullish order flow. So yes, I do see both ways. I would need to be convinced by more lower time frame order flow, M15 1 hour. So M15 at the minimum would need to look quite convincing, maybe target these lows, and then we'll see where price progresses from there. I'm not convinced with this sort of price action here at the moment. I would want to see a nice strong structure just like this one created when it reacted to that buy side liquidity up here. So I'm good with going either way. We have a high time frame on our side to go bullish towards these previous weekly highs, let's say, but we also have that possible scenario for the deeper pullback on the daily and the weekly to go lower to look for shorts. So if these lower time frames start indicating shorts and bearish order flow, well, the bearish order flow indicating shorts on these lower time frames, then I'm happy to go with that down until those daily, weekly imbalances that overlap. Okay, so I hope that's really clear. Let's have a quick look at the M15, see how that's shaping up, but I don't expect to see much different from the 1 hour. So this is the M15 this morning. It's had a bit of a bullish open, right, pre-London open, but I don't really expect this zone here to hold. Why? We've got Asia range sell side liquidity. Look at this low resistance formation here. There's no liquidity grab on the sell side liquidity. We've taken buy side liquidity as well. We've got SMT here. I don't expect this imbalance to hold. I expect it to take out maybe some early buyers here who just saw this as a sign to go long. This sort of shape formation here and Asia range, this is quite weak, so I would expect price to take that out quite easily, and then whether it uses that sell side liquidity to then go build long from there, or to of course break down and come towards these lows, right, we'll be ready for those scenarios and see how price forms, right, for us in New York or for the rest of this London session. Right, it looks like price may be struggling with this area a little bit, but yeah, this wouldn't be the sort of scenario and the price action I would be looking for to start going long from just yet, because this is quite weak. So I want to see more order flow, whether that is to the upside or the downside, to see what price is willing to do. So back up to the daily to wrap things up. The main outlook of this is just to remain flexible, to remain open to the idea that we could be bullish or bearish right down to these zones here. Price is in this bullish daily fair value gap. So of course, with the lower time frame looking a bit more bearish, you have to be careful that the daily at any time could override that lower time frame scenario, right, and all those traps play out and price continues bullish from here. So be cautious, look for that lower time frame order flow, look for it to be clear, and then we'll go from there. I hope that was clear. Any questions, let me know in the comments, and I'll see you guys next week.